morning YouTube, welcome to the channel. I hope you've enjoyed the last couple of videos, and you find me currently ploughing through the mud coming back from Milne Springs, following a truck full of manure, and it's a little bit ripe. Woo! But hey ho, it's got to be done. Wow, it's muddy. I'm going to have to wash this down when I get home. So, what do I plan on doing this week? Well, this week, you will be pleased to know I'm going to do the last fort in the series, although there's many more of them to come, or many more of them available, I should say. I've decided that you've probably had enough of forts. So today I'm going to do Fort Brockhurst. It will only be a short one, and that will do for forts for now. The bike segment today is going to be Scott motorcycles. I'll tell you the reason for me doing it later on. Let's just get past these two. Thank you. Yeah, so just going to let you enjoy the ride for a little while, and then I'll put the Brockhurst Fort on. Woo. Bring tears to your eyes, that will. And I've got to follow it all the way up the hill. Deep joy. Just listen to that engine. Point of interest, I'm nearly at the end of my running in period. I'm currently at 1,036 miles, so only 164 to go, and it's been an experience. I've tried to stick as close as I can to what the manual says. I try not to go over 50 at the moment, but you know, there have been occasions where I've overtaken and stuff like that, and pushed it to 60 for brief periods. Oh, look at the doggy. And yeah, it's so much better. So from the day I got it, which it felt a little bit rough, but I knew it would, to now where it's smooth as a bucket of lugworms, and it's just such a pleasure to ride now. The brakes are all warning, the gear change is great. And what I found for me with the gear change, I have got a heel toe gear lever on, and what I found for me is that I do a better gear change with my foot on the front going down to first, and then on the rear, not the heel but the ball of my foot on the back part of the gear lever, and for some reason I just have a more positive gear change. If I'm using my top of my toes, it's not such a smooth gear change. Oh, I think I'll get a little bit further back from that. Whew. I suppose that's what you get for living and riding country roads. Got full load on as well, otherwise it'd be steaming it up here. Let's just hope he doesn't turn the paddles on. I could have got this out a little bit sooner. I am kind of sticking to Wednesdays, but if it's ready, then I'll put it out. But unfortunately, I've had no broadband. I was given an upgrade a couple of weeks back, and it's taken them this long to get the engineers out. They came out yesterday afternoon, did a fabulous job of putting fibre in for me, but I'll let that get out of the way. There we go. Oh great, it's going my way. So, back en route. So, as I was saying, this week's history segment, we'll go into it now, is Brockhurst Fort. Hope you enjoy it. The reason I'm doing Fort Brockhurst is twofold. Firstly, I grew up not more than 500 yards away from it in Rowner, and secondly, my granddad served in it during the Second World War, so I sort of have a soft spot for it. Fort Brockhurst, built between 1858 and 1862, is one of 5 forts in Gosport which form the Palmerston Fort Group. The others are Fort Elson, Fort Grange, Fort Rowner, where I used to fish as a nipper, and Fort Gomer. With their formidable firepower and strategic positioning, their main purpose was to defend the dockyards from potential attack from a French invasion, which, as we know, never occurred. Changes in artillery design at the time meant that the fort was obsolete before it was even finished. The increased range of the new weapons meant the fort was too close to the dockyards to be effective against land assault, hence the reason Fort Fareham was built, which was built further away and 6 years later. The fort did remain in commission between 1862 and 1957, serving as accommodation for military units, storage and training facilities. It was involved to a point in the First World War and suffered mild bomb damage in the Second World War, but never saw action under its intended purpose. The fort boasted an impressive number of heavy guns on the ramparts to prioritise offence over defence, and 20 light guns which were placed in the midsection to provide crossfire in conjunction with Fort Rowner and Fort Elson. My grandfather, Lance Bombardier Bernard Hiscock, was briefly posted in Fort Brockhurst with the Royal Horse Artillery to train and prepare for his role in the 8th Army in Africa as part of Monty's Desert Rats, and then posted to Italy. After its decommissioning in 1957, it became part of the English heritage, and as have each of the forts between Gosport, Portsmouth and Porchester. As such, the fabric of the fort has hardly changed, as you can see by this series of photographs taken this last Saturday. Now, a small group of dedicated volunteers serve to reenact the life of soldiers from the early days of the fort's history and regularly put on displays of drill and musketry in uniforms of the day, as you can see by this video.
Presents. Fire. No. Yeah, we're in the period before.
These days, the east corner is used to store English Heritage Reserve collections, and the fort opens to the public twice a month. Entry is free, and there are often displays and fairs in the grounds. All these details can be found in the Fort Brockhurst website. As I said, this is only a short history, as there really isn't much to tell. The fort that was out of date before it was finished, which never saw battle, and is now a tourist attraction. But my granddad loved it there, and when I was young he told me many stories, or me and my sisters, many stories, about how it was haunted, and about how one night he saw a ghostly hand wearing his watch that he thought he'd lost. So I hope you have found this interesting, and hopefully next week's history, which will be about our coastline, will be interesting as well. In reaction to my second video I did, I got a comment from @TartanCobbler7242 who told me that his better half's great uncle, Alfred Angus Scott, was the founder of Scott Motorcycle Company, which I think is brilliant. So this week, I'm going to do the history of Scott motorcycles. Initially, Alfred Angus Scott was a prolific inventor who registered over 50 patents between 1879 and 1920. However, it was in 1908 in Bradford that he funded Scott Engineering, but the company soon changed the name to Scott Motorcycle Company. Alfred then moved around a lot and ended up working with W. Sisson and Company Limited in Gloucester, where he learnt to design marine engines. Before 1908 though, Alfred's first motorcycle, a design of his own, was the 2-horsepower twin-cylinder design which he built and fitted with the steering head of a bicycle. This was just a prototype which he developed into a proper motorcycle, of which only 6 were produced. Unfortunately, I can't get any photographs of that. He went on to produce several other patents pertaining to the early motorbikes until finally he started producing them in 1908. With the vertical 2-stroke 450cc twin, with patented triangulated frame, chain drive, neutral finder, kickstarter and 2-speed gearbox, his patented 2-stroke engine designs are still the basis of modern 2-stroke engines, and features such as the kickstart, monoshock suspension, efficient radiators, rotary inlet valves, drip-free lubricators and centre stands continue to this day. His bikes became very successful and did well in competitions, winning the fastest laps on the Isle of Man TT circuit from 1911 to 1914. So much so that his bikes were deemed too efficient for the TT circuit for racing against other bikes of the same capacity, so their cubic capacity was multiplied by 1.32 for competitive purposes. In 1915, Alfred left the company and after the war formed the Scott Autocar Company in Bradford, where he developed the half motorcycle, half sidecar three-wheeler called the Sociable, which was originally designed for the military for carrying machine guns. It had a 578cc water-cooled 2-cylinder 2-stroke engine, but was not a success and production ended in 1925. During this time, Alfred Angus Scott also developed what was to become the long-lived Squirrel. Way ahead of its time, the Squirrel boasted the new 60-mile-per-hour 486cc 2-speed engine with aluminium pistons and twin drip feeds placed in front of the rider. This was Scott's first machine to be designed and built as a sports model, scaling £220 and priced at £105. The period press for the time gave it thumbs up, raising the interest of potential buyers from afar. Alfred had some success on the racing circuit, winning several races, but at the time never really saw the same success that he had on the TT circuit after 1920. The Squirrel continued its success and later became the Flying Squirrel and then the Flying Squirrel Tourer. Unfortunately, Alfred Angus Scott passed away in 1923. However, the firm continued under the watchful care of Scott enthusiast Matt Holder. There were a few other names involved, but he was basically the main man. Variations on a theme continued throughout the years, and the Squirrel in many forms continued to develop into the 50s. With the 1939 Flying Squirrel, then the 1950 Flying Squirrel. Also during this period, Scott had moderate success with the 1923 Sprint. In 1930, they produced the 500 Power Plus, and then the triple prototype, which never really took off. Unfortunately, Matt Holder was involved in so many other projects that the Scott brand fell by the wayside. It's very likely that production of the Scott bikes ceased in the early 70s. There are many Scott enthusiasts and the bikes have lasted well, with many examples still in pristine condition in enthusiast hands and in museums. That's it for this week for motorbikes. Still not decided what I'm going to do next week. We'll make it a surprise. Well, that's Melrose for this week. Thanks for looking. Hope to see you again next time. Don't forget, like, subscribe. It all makes a difference. You take care, ride safe, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.